From the Oregon State University Extension Service, this is Pollination, a podcast that tells the stories of researchers, land managers, and concerned citizens making bold strides to improve the health of pollinators. I'm your host, Dr. Adoni Melathopoulos, Assistant Professor in Pollinator Health in the Department of Horticulture. In this episode, I've got two new people who've come to the Pacific Northwest to do pollinator health work. First up is Kremen. She's the President's Excellence Chair in Biodiversity at the University of British Columbia. Many of you probably know Dr. Kremen because she's one of the most prominent ecologists working with bees anywhere in the world. She was previously at Berkeley, but now she's moved up to British Columbia, Canada, in our region, which is really exciting. Another amazing addition is Corin Pease. He is the Pacific Northwest Pollinator Conservation Planner at the Xerces Society. He's been here since May, but he's been really busy getting initiatives on pollinator protection right across the region, up in Washington, Idaho, and here in Oregon. You're going to hear in this episode an exciting initiative that he's involved with in the Mid-Columbia region, new pollinator conservation innovation strategy here in Oregon that's targeting dollars for land managers in Hood River and Wasco County. Anyways, without further ado, let's talk with Dr. Kremen and Corin. Okay, I'm really excited to have here in Corvallis, Claire Kremen. Welcome to Pollination.
Thank you.
We're very excited because you're now in the Pacific Northwest along with the rest of us. You have a new position at the University of British Columbia. Tell us a little bit about that position.
Well, I just started this year as President's Excellence Chair in Biodiversity, and I've come up from UC Berkeley, so I've just sort of made a little climate change shift going up to Vancouver, and really excited about being there.
And you've only been there a few months, like 4 months or so.
Yeah, that's right.
So it's very early on. I imagine you're starting to just get the lay of the land, let alone trying to think about what you're going to be doing over the next few years. But tell us about some of your initial impressions of being in BC and some of the things that you can see yourself potentially working on. We won't hold you to it. We won't come back in a year and say, Claire, you said on the show.
Great, yeah. Well, one exciting thing about Vancouver is it is so close to agricultural areas. So literally within 25 minutes of my home, unless there's a lot of traffic, I can get out to some farm sites. And in some of these farm sites, they've been working for some years in adding in some sustainable agricultural practices, including some habitat enhancements like hedgerows and grassland set-asides. And some of the farmers are beginning to experiment with including some seed mixes for flowering forbs in those grassland set-asides. So I've been talking with a group up there, the Delta Farmland Wildlife Trust, about working with them and their farmers to test these grassland set-asides and see how they are for pollinator habitat and what kind of pollination services can be provided to some of the pollinator-dependent crops, which include blueberry and cranberry. Raspberry, strawberry are also up there. So, but the blueberries are really a dominant one. So, yeah, we are planning to do some work on the blueberry fields.
I guess that's one of the differences from California, that the crops are different. You've done a lot of great work in things like watermelon and vegetable crops as well.
We've just published some work from California on squash, and we have also been working in strawberry. That's not published yet. We've worked in sunflower, almonds, watermelon. We've had and tomatoes, even cherry tomatoes. So we've done quite a lot of different crops in California. There's definitely crossover. I mean, there's some blueberry production in California, but not much. But definitely there's a lot of strawberry in California. So yeah, there's some crossover, but these ericaceous crops, the blueberry, cranberry kind of thing, are definitely like the colder areas better.
And for some of our listeners who aren't aware, I mean, you do a lot of different work on multiple registers, from like ecosystem services in a very general way to very kind of concrete, thinking about what farmers can do on their land. You have done work very kind of similar to this with hedgerows and other kinds of plantings. Tell us a little bit about the work in California that you've done.
Yeah, so the work in California we did for 10 years. We looked every year at these hedgerows and how they're influencing the bee communities. And we found that a network of hedgerows especially is really, really helpful for promoting pollinator diversity, pollinator abundance. We found enhancements of pollinators right on the hedgerows themselves, but also we found a greater regional diversity if you have these hedgerows, so more turnover from one hedgerow to the next.
So they're not just these local things that can have these
it's kind of bigger
impacts.
landscape effects. And then in our most recent work, we found that having a hedgerow nearby is actually helpful as well. It can help have more longer term effects from season to season, more persistence of species if you have nearby hedgerows as well as a good flowering environment. So yeah, we're starting to tease apart these landscape effects of the hedgerows as well as the sort of more immediate effects. And then as far as their impact on adjacent crop pollination, it's a bit mixed. We found some results that suggest there could be a positive impact, and then other studies where we don't see any difference. So I think that a lot of that has to do with context and with the size of the field. And if, I think, you can't go too far necessarily in thinking that a tiny hedgerow is going to provide all the habitat that's needed to give you enough bees to pollinate a huge, huge field. So yeah, kind of thinking about diversity within the field too is probably pretty important for the pollinators and the services.
Well, this is really exciting. We're so thrilled to have you in the region and to start to tackle some of these problems, especially in British Columbia. Thank you so much for taking time. I noticed that you have a very busy schedule here in Corvallis today, and you're off to your next meeting. Thanks for taking time to talk with us.
Okay, thank you so much.
I'm here at Xerces Society headquarters here in Portland with Corin Pease. Welcome to Pollination.
Oh, well, thanks.
Okay, so you're relatively new here at Xerces. Tell us what your position is, because it's very focused on the Pacific Northwest.
I'm the Pacific Northwest Conservation Planner for Xerces Society, and I also work with the NRCS, which is the Natural Resources Conservation Service. And so my job is to work with landowners, farmers, and ranchers to help conserve pollinators and beneficial insects on their farms.
This is so welcome. I know a lot of our listeners, we've heard of these kinds of initiatives taking place in California, in the Midwest, but it seems like the Pacific Northwest has been an area that so many people want something like this to happen, but we just, until now, haven't had this focus. Tell us a little bit about the response you've had. You started in May. December.
Yeah, I started in May, and there is so much energy out there to provide habitat for pollinators and beneficial insects on farms. And, even in this short time period, I've really seen the incredible interest in conserving these important critters in our agricultural areas.
One thing that that I'm really excited about is this initiative in the Mid-Columbia region. Tell us a little bit about that. That seems like a real first for at least Oregon, having a NRCS program really focused on pollinators.
Well, the state of Oregon, NRCS has decided to focus efforts on conservation of pollinators and beneficial insects in agriculture in the Dalles and Hood River area, and that gives us an opportunity to help cost share programs to put in beneficial insect habitat, cover crops, and implement other methods of conserving pollinators and beneficial insects in those cropping systems like cherries, blueberries, and apples and pears.
Okay, so if you were a grower in those regions or some kind of a land manager, you could go into your NRCS office and there would be some programs that you could subscribe to put some of these conservation measures for pollinators specifically on your land.
Oh yeah, it's a great program, and so majority of the program is under the EQIP program, and that's to help fund those growers and support them with proper information to make those projects successful so that they can establish native plants and other plants that provide beneficial habitat for these critters.
I imagine in the last couple of months you've talked to a lot of land managers, a lot of different types of land that they're managing, which must be exciting because there's so many nooks and crannies and different things that people are doing, but it must also be kind of daunting thinking about how to help such, a forester, a cranberry grower, a cherry grower. They all have kind of different pest management problems, different agronomic practices. What excites you about that, and where do you see the kind of way forward with such a diverse area such as Oregon and Washington and Idaho?
Well, I've been working in agriculture for many years, but this job has really given me the opportunity to get out into ranch land and forests. And I'm really seeing that there's a huge opportunity in these two areas also to enhance habitat for pollinators.
Right. Imagine there's so much on the eastern part of the state that's ranch land, rangeland that also I was thinking, when it comes to, particularly bees, a lot of our bee biodiversity is over there rather than on this side of the Cascades.
Yes, definitely.
And in forests, that must be like half the state.
Yeah, in the Pacific Northwest, there's a lot of forests, so there's a lot of opportunity for working with foresters to enhance their pollinator habitat, especially after logging and opened up areas for good pollinator habitat.
Well, Corin, thank you so much for taking time away for a rather busy day, and we look forward to you charging ahead and all the initiatives that you're going to be involved with here in the region.
All right. Well, thanks for having me on.
Thank you so much for listening. The show is produced by Quinn Sinan-Neal, who's a student here at OSU in the New Media Communications program, and the show wouldn't even be possible without the support of the Oregon Legislature, the Foundation for Food and Agricultural Research, and Western SARE. Show notes with links mentioned on each episode are available on the website, which is at pollinationpodcast.oregonstate.edu. I also love hearing from you, and there's several ways to connect with me. The first one is you can visit the website and leave an episode-specific comment. You can suggest a future guest or topic, or ask a question that could be featured in a future episode. But you can do the same things on Twitter, Instagram, or Facebook by visiting the Oregon Bee Project. Thanks so much for listening, and see you next week.